In 2016, Edmonton Community Foundation committed to tackling one of the most wicked challenges coming out of the city's End Poverty Edmonton report, the elimination of racism. Edmonton Community Foundation decided to take on this problem by trying something new. The experimental approach was a social innovation lab. Edmonton Community Foundation was unfamiliar with labs, so they reached out to Skills Society Action Lab, which had been leading inclusive think tanks and labs since 2010. Together, Skills Society Action Lab and ECF formed the Edmonton Shift Lab. A diverse stewardship team came together, community consultations took place, and the initial iteration of the lab was launched.
So we are 5 of the stewards of the Edmonton Shift Lab, and we're responsible for helping design the process that we undertook in Shift Lab 1.0 and 2.0, facilitating, responding to feedback, listening to community, and working on these prototypes to address racism together.
Shift Lab 1.0 focused on the intersection of racism, poverty, and housing in Edmonton. However, the lab also learned to refine its focus and pivot. In Shift Lab 2.0, we specifically looked at racism and scoped the lab to adopt a triple helix approach combining systems thinking, design methods, and Indigenous epistemologies to arrive at promising solutions.
So I think what was fundamental with the Edmonton Shift Lab was that our relationships with each other were so solid that it was easier to bring the team into the Indigenous worldview. So the fact that we took time to engage in ceremony, to go out to community and be a part of a sweat lodge, to do berry picking with our core lab teams, to do the things that Indigenous people do on the land, was what I think really built this team to be strong and to invite my colleagues into an Indigenous worldview. From that, we were able to work collectively to support these prototypes so that we're looking not only from a Western perspective, but also an Indigenous perspective. How might these prototypes make systemic change? How might they do good work based not only from a Western worldview, but also an Indigenous worldview? We don't have a prescriptive process. We don't have a go-to manual on how to engage with Indigenous peoples. Our process was based on respect. It was rooted in love, kindness, compassion. And because of that, because of our collective teamwork and commitment to address racism in our city, that has enabled the Shift Lab, along with our core lab team, to what I think do some really profound and great work around racism in our city.
We engaged in community campfires and a speaker series that brought together international speakers focused deeply on combating racism. Pulling this together allowed all Edmontonians to access information and insights on racism.
So one of the values that guides the Shift Lab is that we know that we don't necessarily have all the answers to fighting racism. So one of the things we try to do is help ask better questions. And so with this international speaker series, we brought in people who had a combination of lived experience, theory, and practice to come to Edmonton and to Canada to share what they're seeing and observing and doing in their parts of the world that could apply here.
In some ways, battling racism we're almost new at it. Now, not brand new at it. I'm not suggesting this just appeared in the last couple of years or anything. But I don't think we have a sophisticated or lengthy record of investigating the whys and trying to counter that. So I really like this idea. I love the idea of prototypes. Prototyping is a better way, I think, for government to deal with some of these issues, whether it's poverty, racism, homelessness. We've got to try to find some novel ways of getting at this.
Tonight is an exciting time for the core team especially, and for all of us here, where teams have tested their prototypes with community. So they've already done stuff in the right context, in community settings, to see and get feedback how they might work. And then tonight is a showcase where we're showcasing what the teams have learned from testing these prototypes in different systems, and also looking for partners and folks that would want to pilot these potentially and support the further development of the prototypes.
One insight the lab uncovered was that focusing on behavior change nudging and not just awareness training is a key leverage point for change.
So I've been working with Team 1. We're looking at how might we reimagine what it means to be a treaty person. So we have been working on a couple of prototypes throughout the couple of months. The journey has been really interesting. I think when we talk about it being human-centered, it's really about bringing your identity, about your experiences, and really being able to be a part of the challenges and being able to also work through some of the tough questions. So throughout the journey, I think there's been moments where we've felt challenged, but we've had to be able to work around that and really talk about the tough questions. And I think that's really what's brought out a lot of the change that we've seen throughout the journey and the prototypes that we've come up with.
Yeah, as part of Team 3, we were looking to address white fragility and help people move past that into allyship. And so our project, we came up with this subscription box, which enables people to experience different tools and different ideas and different articles that would perhaps help them with their own journey towards social justice. As it relates to social justice, I think I'm taking away my own relationship with whiteness and with my community and with privilege and sort of determining how best can I become a better ally. As an innovator, one of the most amazing parts of this process was what Jody brought to it, and that Indigenous lens and determining how that might be able to be woven into this type of work. I'm really inspired by that. It's incredible.
I was in Team 2, and our team was working on the question of how to design an empathy experience, an immersive empathy experience that can help reduce racist behavior over time. We worked on an app actually. We came up with the concept of an app which can be introduced in different organizations. The way we all came together, such diverse backgrounds, such diverse ideas, and how to let go of the things that were very close to us in the spirit of a team building effort to focus on a solution which speaks to everyone, which has the voice of everyone, was something that I learned to do. And it was an excellent experience for me, yeah.
I was in Group 4, the de-escalators. I worked on de-escalating overt acts of racism. I'm hoping it would put more of a focus on the colonization, the history of that, and the Indigenous people's fights for rights and land and resource, being a part of that Canadian narrative, let's say. Basically, hope. Yeah, the future sounds exciting to me, if you can put it that way. Where there was never any much hope there before, but with conversations like this and more work like this, yeah, I'm very happy to be a part of it.
Shift Lab is showing that you can take a different approach to addressing a complex challenge that I think sometimes people get resigned to. I've heard people say before, do you ever really think racism will go away? Well, I don't know if racism will ever go away, but is it worth taking a shot? Shift Lab is saying to me it's worth trying, it's worth engaging in the question, it's worth bringing people together to explore it, and that the future of Shift Lab is to continue to take a shot. And I like how it's always an evolution. So there's something that is being learned, and Shift Lab is evolving to try to get better at I guess, unpacking this complex issue.
As Shift Lab 2.0 comes to a close, we are continuing to look for funders and supporters to grow these prototypes. The stewards will soon release a report that shares more about our process and what we learned. Keep following us on social media and stay tuned for more.